This is the sculpture Go, and I wanted to make something that was really big that you could stand inside to sort of reproduce that idea of what it's like to be inside of a wave, inside of a barrel. You know, what I really love is sort of the sense of the light that comes through that ceiling that kind of comes over your head. That's a lot like what it's like when you're inside of a wave. You get all this light coming through the water. So I made this piece to kind of imitate that, and interesting for sculpture to be light and for one to be inside a piece rather than looking at it on a wall or looking at it on a base or just looking at it. You can be inside the piece, and it's been in a couple museum shows and been around the world a couple times. I'm kind of glad I still have it, but it would be fun if we found the right place for it. This piece is called the Deborah number. The Deborah number is a term that's used by mathematicians to talk about the motion that takes place in solids. Moving mountains is where it comes from. Deborah in the Bible talks about the mountains moving. But this was an idea of like when there's a drop in water, that first dent in the water, when you drop a stone or something into it, it goes out like that. It's kind of like the beginning of life. So all these are sort of like, in a sense, events. A wave is kind of an event in a static grid. It's kind of something that happens. It's a little bit existential for me. This piece up here is called Foment, and it's just really the top of a wave as it begins to break, as that energy begins to break and the water begins to break. It goes from energy that's moving through water to moving the water itself, and it starts to turn into foam. And so that's what that piece was about. I kind of like that one. One of the interesting things for me about assembling the sculptures as an installation is that they interact with the internal architecture, with interior architecture. They can be placed at different locations in a room, in a space, and kind of activate that space. So some can come off the floor, others can hang really high, off the ceilings or off the walls, hang here and there, and thus activate the entire space. And it gives you this sense too of all these things kind of talking to one another, playing with one another. When you go to the ocean, when you go to the sea, you have all these different events happening all over the place. Over here, there's waves breaking on the beach. Out there, there's waves breaking way out on the sandbar, on a reef. Over here, there's a point of rocks, they're breaking over there. So at any given moment, there's all these different situations happening. So in some sense, we could think of this as being one moment in time where all these different events are occurring simultaneously. The wonderful things that can happen is that you can be doing some activity. Like I was a surfer, I was in the water all the time. I realized at some point, also making art, that waves were incredible pieces of sculpture, and that I had a whole repertoire of shapes and of ideas for shapes and of what happens with light or transparency that I could put into art. And it took a long time for that to occur to me. But when it did, it was like, wow, I can make all these sculptures because I already know these forms. I don't have to kind of come up with them. And so this show, the paintings and the sculptures and everything is kind of a representative of that realization that I already had been given a repertoire and a content. I didn't even think of it that way for a long time, and then one day it just kind of occurred to me. So I kind of feel blessed that I had that realization.